lunch. So I know I'm a little tired, but I want to welcome you out to the 23rd Central Texas African American Family Support Conference. My name is Sonia Hartman, and I will be your moderator for today's session. I want to thank one of our sponsors, which is NAMI Central of Texas. We want to thank them for making this conference possible and for this being a successful conference. So let's go over those housekeeping rules. This is a safe and supportive space. Please help us maintain a respectful and inclusive environment. In this room, if you are in person in this room, please do not join Whova online. So do not turn that on, and you can look in the Whova just to see what's going on, but please do not join Whova online if you're actually in the room. If you feel overwhelmed or need to talk to someone during the session, feel free to step out and take a break and take care of yourself. We do have our comfort suite, which is just 3 doors down next to room number 5. If you feel the need to visit our comfort suite, it is there for you. If you are receiving CEUs or need CEUs, remember it was already announced earlier, but if you missed it, the QR codes are up on the wall, or you can sign in, and there's a clipboard going around now where you can sign in also for your CEUs. Finally, we have some great conference merchandise. Visit our website at ctaafsc.com/shop and get you some of that Central Texas African American Family Support Conference gear. Those funds are utilized to help us continue the work that we've been doing and making these great conferences a success. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Ms. Deja Gamble. She is the program manager at Communities and Schools of Central Texas. She received her undergraduate degree in sociology and education, as well as a master's of science in social work from the University of Texas at Austin. Deja's area of interest includes school social work, parent-child relationship dynamics, and the intersection between poverty and childhood mental health. Her work seeks to ignite change by asking difficult questions while never losing focus of the child in front of her. We want to thank you for joining us this afternoon, and let's welcome Ms. Deja.
Hello, everybody. I am so honored to be here presenting in front of y'all today. I don't want to be blinded by the light. I want to go ahead and apologize. I'm recovering from a cold, so if I sound congested, this is my first day back with the world after being sick over the weekend. Also, if you saw me earlier, I was in a boot and I took it off because being lopsided while presenting just kind of messes with, I don't know, my inner core self. So I put my foot, my regular shoe on, but I want to assure all of you that I will be okay. My mom gets very nervous when she sees me without it on. So I want to assure you, and if she's watching online, that I am okay and everything will be fine. Welcome to this presentation. The kids will be all right. Understanding the resiliency of children. Like she said before, my name is Deja. How have y'all been these past? I missed yesterday because I was sick, so I kind of feel like I missed today. Yeah, this morning food was good. I had to be careful that I didn't eat a lot so that I'd be able to present in front of y'all. Wish I could have ate more. Before I get started, I just want to get everybody to take 3 deep breaths in. They will breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. And we'll take one more breathe in, hold it at the top, and breathe out. I start all of my sessions with my kids. I work at an elementary school. I refer to my students as my kids because some days I feel like they are my children, even though I don't have kids of my own. We start every session with 3 deep breaths, and we end every session with 3 deep breaths. So I don't know if they're more so for you or if they're more for me, for my ritual of how I get started with my presentations. All right, without further ado, let's get to it. So this is kind of my outline of how I framed this presentation for today. We're going to start over going some theoretical framework. I'm a social worker who likes to practice in theory, which means I do research on where I come from, where I see myself as a social worker, and kind of the lens that I view working with children through and working with the community and parents. So we'll go over that. We'll understand childhood trauma from what I've gathered from some people. Y'all have talked about trauma a lot throughout these past day and a half, really 2 days. So we'll go over a little bit about trauma, childhood trauma, and what that means. And when I say trauma, what am I talking about? What does it mean to be resilient? feel like resiliency is one of those buzzwords along with self-care that's been thrown out there a lot. So I'll go over a little bit of what do I mean when it says be resilient, or if we want resilient children, what does that mean? Talk about how to build it. And then finally, we'll go over something called Developmental Relationships Framework. It comes out of a research institute. It's kind of where I also shaped my practice through, but we'll go over what DRF is and kind of how can you apply this to the work that you do with kids or families or community partners. If you have questions, I'm very much a believer in like you get out of the session what you put into it. Maybe that was something my professors told me when I was in graduate school. You get more out the more you put in. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, you don't have to wait until the end. We have a mic up front. We can pass it around. I want y'all to be engaged. So if you have questions about the slides or something that I said, please let me know as they come up, because also there's a chance that if you ask me at the end, I don't want to have to flip back through the slides to reference what you had a question on. So just raise your hand, stop me, yell out, Deja, Miss Deja, whatever, get my attention somehow. And it can be more of a conversation rather than me talking at y'all for 45 minutes. All right, theoretical framework. So there's these three big theories in social work where I come from: person and environment, systems, and a strengths-based perspective. Is anybody in here a social worker? I know. Okay, so in school, yeah, social work is like a very broad term. When someone says, what is social work? Like, what is not social work? So kind of go through person and environment. What is it like? What kind of comes to your mind when I say person and environment? And you can just yell them at me. And if someone says it online, how that person is in a certain situation. What else? We're affected by our environment. Nature versus nurture. Anything else? There's no wrong answers. I work in elementary school, so I'm a firm believer there is no wrong answer. Yeah, person and environment, I'm really talking about understanding the individual and their behavior in light of their environment. Human behavior is shaped by society, and society shapes people, people shape society. So it's that nature versus nurture. When I go to my family, the way I'm with my sister, I swear we speak a different language when it's just me and her. But the same language I speak with my sister is not the way I behave in front of my mother. In front of my grandmother, I'm a completely different person. I'm still Deja in all my curly hair, my high top, or my platform Converse is what I normally am wearing most of the time. I'm still me, but the way I'm behaving in front of my mom versus my sister versus the way I show up at work is a totally different way. It's the same way we see kids. The kid that I see sitting in front of me when I have my one-on-one sessions versus the way they behave in school, in their classroom, can still be the same child, but they're showing up two totally different ways. Versus the way when I get phone calls like, well, Miss Deja, when my kid's at home, they don't act like that. It's probably true. Your kid probably is not acting the way they show up at school versus the way they show up with me versus at the playground. So that's really what I'm talking about, person and environment. Same way, think about it. I work over in East Austin. East Austin has a totally different vibe than West Austin, than North Austin, than South Austin. You can't tell me the way that East Austin looks is not shaping the behavior and the way those children are acting versus the way kids who are from the other side of 35, the other side of the tracks, up north past 290, that if I took one of my little black and brown kids and put them in a North Austin school, their behavior would change. That's kind of where my brain goes to when I think of person and environment. The second one, systems theory. Systems, what's the first word that pops into your head? Systems, yeah. Regulation. Formal versus informal systems, what else? I'm also comfortable sitting in silence. It does not bother me. Yeah, structures and norms. We all, and you're like, oh, the we all say, what about the system? We all live in a system, right? Pretty sure when you drove here, you drove on the right side of the street. You drive, I hope, Most of you, but 1 foot. You're not pressing both pedals with both feet. Those are some of the systems that we live within. I work in the education system. Texas Education Agency dictates what these kids are learning when they come to my elementary school. We go pre-K through 6th grade. When they're here, TEA is telling us what we need to teach them. Austin ISD is telling us, hey, these are the teachers you need to go over. Social work in a way kind of tells me this is what's important. So these are all the different systems that we exist and live in. Not only that, you have to be rule-abiding citizen. There's policies from Austin to Travis County, state of Texas, United States, being part of United Nations. Like the list goes on and on of what systems we exist in. So it's looking holistically at the situation to understand the issues and the hardships and putting together the pieces of a puzzle. It's kind of one of the ways when I talk to my kids, or you'll hear me call them my kids. I know I've said it before, but then I realized when I step outside of the school that it might sound weird, people who don't work in a school, but it's a puzzle, right? Because you're at work, kids are at school 40 hours a week. I'm one little part of their puzzle where they have all these other interactions, all of these other things that are playing in their lives. I'll give you an example. I have at our school, we don't fight. Telling kids, don't put your hands on each other, don't play fight, because it just turns to somebody getting mad and then 2 students getting suspended. When my kid says, Miss Deja, my parent says if someone puts their hands on me, I can hit them back. It's like, okay, that might be their home, right? That's one of the systems they're living in. But when you're at school, the school is telling you, no, you can't put your hands on another student. When at home, they're being told, yeah, you can. And if they keep putting your hands on you, let me know and I'll come up there. So these are the 2 systems. Think about a 6-year-old sitting in front of me where I'm like, why'd you hit this kid? They're like, at home, that's what I do. I hit my brother, I hit my cousin, I hit whoever, because that's the norm in my community, in my home, in my neighborhood, at my apartment complex. That's what we do. But then all of a sudden at school, we're like, nope, you can't do that. And I'm not even going to give you a bridge of what you can do or a replacement behavior of what you can do. All right, last one, strengths perspective. What comes to mind when I say something is strengths-based, strengths perspective? Focusing on what's good. What else?
Building on their strengths as you're looking to develop different interventions and or strategies.
Yeah.
It's easy to identify the negative. It's typically difficult to identify the strengths, but if you work from a strengths perspective, you're going to get a better result.
Yeah. One of my favorite questions to ask people, what do you like about this kid? I hear all day about how they do this, they're terrible, they don't behave, they don't listen, they don't, they're bad, they're terrible, they don't do this. What do you like about them? What are they good at? How do you enjoy spending time with them? When you show up, are your automatic first thought is how much you don't like this child? Or is it, hey, you made me smile. Yeah, you don't listen, but sometimes you're really funny. And I like when you make me smile. That's what I mean when I say something is strengths-based is yes, I can acknowledge all of the things you need to work on, all of the things that are going wrong in your life. Yes, you live with a single mom. Yes, someone's incarcerated. Yes, you may have been born into a deck of cards that is hard. And it's hard. And I'm not saying it's not hard. But what's one thing you enjoy doing? What's one thing you're good at? And for some of my like pre-K 4-year-olds, those sweet, innocent children who also crack me up with some of their answers, they're like, well, I like goldfish. And I ask them what they're good at. They tell me they like goldfish. I'm like, okay, not really what I meant, but they're able to make that connection of this is something I like. One of the things I have 2 interns that I supervise, and one thing I task them with doing when they're getting to know their children is calling each one of their parents or guardian, excuse me, whoever, to ask them a series of questions. And some of them are routine of like, hey, my name's Miss Deja. I'm going to be working with your kid. Just want to let you know if you have any questions, please come to me, blah, 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 introduce themselves. Then I have them ask, what's something you enjoy doing with your child? What's something you like to do? What's something your kid is good at? You know how many people tell me this is the first time someone has asked me what my child is good at? Kids who are in 5th, 6th grade have been in the education system at my school from pre-K to 4th grade. So 5 years, and that's 6 years, 5, 6 years. The COVID time, like, isn't real years in my head still, but have been in school. And it is the first time someone, an outside agency, someone that does not work in the school, has asked them what they like about their kid, has asked them what their child is good at. We do at least 3 parent conferences a year. 3 parent conferences, say they've been in school 5 years. 15 times a parent has sat in front of a teacher and not once have they asked them, what's your kid good at? How are we supposed to be empowering these children, having them become resilient kids who can sit in a classroom, who can sit and take the STAR test for 4 hours, and we're not talking about the things they're good at. We are only talking about what is wrong. And my notes I wrote, strengths perspective is putting strengths and resources at the center rather than the problems. It does not limit people to their trauma. It emphasizes the human capacity for resilience, resistance, and courage. I do not believe that you can talk about building resilient children unless you're coming from a strengths-based perspective. And that's one of my core beliefs, is that if you're not coming from a strengths-based and you're not looking at the things that they're good at, you cannot talk to me about building resiliency in a child. So this is kind of my 3 things when I come back to writing this presentation, working with a kid. When I have someone in front of me, I'm thinking about these 3 things. How is this child showing up in front of me right now versus their family, versus the classroom, person and environment, systems? What other things are happening in their life that is shaping this behavior? What other things are maybe in conflict with each other? There are 2 opposing things happening. And strengths perspective, what is this child good at? What is the strength of this child? And these are things that can be extrapolated to other contexts. You can talk about these 3 things in a community. The East Austin community is one of the most tight-knit communities I have ever seen. The parents at the apartment complex where most of my kids live at, some of the most tight-knit mothers I have seen. The state of Texas, whether good or bad, tight-knit-ish. Same thing for systems, which I kind of went over earlier, person and environment, what things are interacting. Does anyone have any questions about these 3 things? You can tell I work in a school. Always stop for questions. All right. What's trauma? I've heard y'all been talking about it the past few days. So what comes to your mind when I say something is a trauma? A trigger. What else? An event where someone had to figure out or process what it meant by themselves. Something that happens that sticks with you. I like that one. A repressed memory. A significant emotional event. I heard one mumble. An earthquake within, yeah. And I like to think a trauma doesn't have to be on the worldwide level. It can be something that just affects you. The way 4-year-olds cry when a crayon breaks, for them in that moment, is a trauma. It does not matter that I bring them another purple crayon. Their first purple crayon that they had broke. Yeah. Someone has been through that has had a negative effect on them. Yeah. Let me ask you this. Does trauma or a traumatic event have to be one singular thing, or can it be many? Yeah. So think about it. Can be many, multiple events. Sorry. I say yeah as filler words. Yes. It does not have to be a singular event. It can be. It can be one thing that has happened, but it can also be the continuous events of what has happened many times throughout someone's life. like I say, there's big talk right now in schools about whether or not like lockdown drills for active shooters are traumatic for children. That's one of the big things going around in schools. I don't remember a time when we didn't do lockdown drills when I was growing up. And I'm relatively young, but even from what I remember in kindergarten, we were always doing them. I went out, I had the opportunity this summer to go out to Uvalde to do some of the crisis response work and meet with some of the children and the families who've been impacted and who lost loved ones. And people is sitting, some of the teachers I was talking with were like, oh, we never have done active shooters. Like, how are you not affected? Even some of my peers were like, you're just so calm and collective. I was like, I've been hearing about school shootings happening since I can remember. Columbine happened, which was like the first big one I remember. No, it was only like 7 or 8. So for my conscious memory, they have always been a thing that we lived with, which is sad because it's not the same thing for my brother and my sister. I'm the youngest. It's not the same for them. And I'm sure it's not the same for you all in this room or online. But for the kids who are coming below me, they don't remember a time where they didn't do school shooter drills and they didn't do lockdown drills. Because remember when they come in and my first thought when I walk into a room is, where's the exit sign? What's behind me? Can I get out of the room? If something happened, I was wearing a boot earlier. If something happened, there's only one elevator. And there's a lot of, we are all up on the 2nd floor. I'm not the only one who would need to use the elevator. How long is it going to take if something were happening in this room to get all of us evacuated out to the elevator or down the stairs and out to a safe place if there was a fire? A long time. These are the things that have constantly been embedded into what I'm thinking about every situation I go in, because it's a combination of many traumatic events in my like schoolhood, but also adult experiences that have shaped the way that I view the world. I'm a Black woman. That's one of my identities. I believe being Black and then being a woman and then being a Black woman are 3 separate things. There are many times in a room where I automatically come in and I'm like, okay, how many Black women are also in this room? If something were to happen, okay, are they going to have my back? Because we have the shared identity. I hope this is something. If I'm thinking about this is someone in their mid-20s. What is someone who's 11, who's 12? What's going through their mind the same time they're entering a room or showing up in a space? All right, childhood trauma, a mental condition caused by severe shock, stress, of fear, especially when the harmful effects last for a long time. It's a definition from the Oxford Dictionary. These are some ones that are just common that I thought people would relate to: abuse, neglect, community or school violence, domestic violence, witnessing it and experiencing it. National disasters, sudden or violent loss of a loved one, military family related stressors. So this could be a parent being deployed, not knowing where they're going, basic training and they have to leave, being injured overseas, all of that, having to move multiple times. My grandfather, like, we're a military family, not me myself, but my parents, having to uproot several times and move because you're being relocated. An assault, it can be a physical assault or a sexual assault, or serious accidents or illness. More than 2 out of every 3 people will report experiencing at least one traumatic event by the time they're 16. So, see how many of us are in this room? So all of us except maybe like 10 could raise their hand and say, I've experienced a childhood trauma. Not a trauma in the adult sense of like over the age of 16, but something that has happened to me when I was a child. Yeah, I saw your hand go up. Oh, you can have my mic.
I think this qualifies, but it's growing up with an alcoholic parent and the long-term aspect of that.
Yeah, the instability. Mental health traumas. When you don't have a parent at home who you can say is going to meet all of my basic needs. And when I say basic needs, do you have a roof over your head? Do you have clothes on your body? Do you have clean clothes on your body? and do you have food that you can eat? When I say basic needs, those are kind of the three things that I'm thinking about when I'm saying, does a child have their basic needs being met? Yeah, obviously this is not an exhaustive list. It's just the ones I could fit on this little slide. Yeah, there is a lot more traumas that could be put on this list. COVID-19 was a collective trauma we all experienced and are experiencing and have impacted us in more ways than one.
Well, in my case, I think I have a little bit more than that. But all of those, check. But there is one, and goes probably close to the military family, stress. And this is for the families who travel a lot, but also for the children who misses a lot of days at school. I was in 11 elementary schools. And sometimes I went to one school and I was really high because I knew everything, more things that they knew. And when I was in another school, I was really low. And the self-esteem at when you are in the elementary school, it really triggers. I mean, anything triggers. Sometimes I was 1 month in one school. Sometimes I was 2 months. The maximum, it was 3 months. And so, but if it wasn't for my aunts, 3 little aunts that I had, it was my support system. She's very intelligent. She's all the time good. We're going to help you, la, la, la. But it was a big gaps sometimes. And that was all the time my trigger. What am I going to do? I had to be intelligent. I had to be this. It was a lot of stress. And just by going late to school, and guess what? Today, all the PSSs who are here can tell me that when we present to the parents about being late, bringing late the children, or missing dates, we have to tell them this is also a childhood trauma that is being developed.
Well, I have a grandson who's lives with me, but he's gone through a couple of those. But I think one that's probably not up there. I'm a PTA president in East Austin at Oak Springs, and my youngest grandson goes there, but the older one goes to a school, Russell Lee Elementary. So he's in that school, so it's 2% Black there. So he's biracial. But anyways, I took him with me to a PTA meeting, and he was just like looking at everybody, because of course it's dominant Black and Hispanic at Oak Springs, and where he goes, of course, it's all white, or a little bit mixed of other races. So I'm like, well, what happened? Did somebody tell you something? Because there was the after school program kind of we're meeting where we were at, and I was meeting with the PSS, and he's like, no, but there's like no kids like at my school. So I think it was more like a culture shock for him. So I was like, well, I mean, these are the kids that live in this neighborhood where your mom lived over by your school. That's the kind of people that live in that neighborhood. So I kind of had to explain to him, but he was just like, just looking at everybody, because it was just predominantly, Hispanic and Black. But he's like, I think I just want to stay at my school, even though, because he just was like, just shocked, like there's no white kids here. That's what he told me when we left. I'm like, I don't know what to tell Enrico. Well, he fits right in. He started in pre-K 3, so everybody's mixed. He's mixed too. So he was like, hey, brother, I mean, there's some white kids, but not like at your school. So they have the things going back and forth. But I mean, it was just like a shock for him, on his face.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I wanted to go back very quickly to talking about absences. It's one of the big things. 90% is the amount of time kids should be in school before they are chronically or have chronic absenteeism, is what their little code says when I look them up in our system. If you have a child who is with let's say a family where there's domestic violence in the home, their basic needs aren't being met. We do breakfast in the classroom at my school. Everybody gets free lunch and free breakfast. Breakfast in the classroom ends at 8 o'clock. That cafeteria come through, they pick up the breakfast, and that's when breakfast is over. If you have a kid who has instability at home because they're having domestic violence going on, maybe some of their basic needs are being neglected. Now they're coming to school late. They're coming in, some kids come in 8:30, 9 o'clock. Our school bell rings at 7:40 is when we start academics. Now they're saying, I have all these things going on at home, all of these traumas. Now you're telling me I can't eat. Have you seen a hungry child, a hangry child? I had to explain that word one time to a second grader last year of what it meant to be hangry. And they finally, that light bulb went up. I'm like, you're not an angry kid. You're not a bad kid. You're hungry. Come have some applesauce. See how your behavior changes. But in a school system, there's so many academic minutes. That's what I hear when I try to pull kids. It's academic minutes, academic minutes. We lost 4 days last week. You know how many academic minutes kids lost? And I'm here like, hey, can I get this kid some pancakes? Your life will be a lot better if you leave this breakfast out rather than calling me about how they're destroying a classroom when all they needed was some cereal. ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, potentially traumatic events that occur in childhood. They tie into trauma. So my slides are right here on this computer, and I've been looking up at the screen trying to read it. For example, experiencing violence, abuse, or neglect, witnessing violence in the home or in your community. So not just talking about what goes on inside your home, but what's going on in the houses around you. Having a family member attempt or complete suicide. There's also environmental aspects that can undermine safety and stability, mental health, substance use, instability due to parental separation, deportation, or incarceration. I also like to add this note on ACEs. It's not a diagnostic tool, and it only paints one picture of the story. Also, most of the study participants were white and had attended college. So when they did this study, they polled people like, hey, what traumas experienced in your life? Most of them attended college. Most of them did not look like me. So if these are the ones that they're experiencing, someone who is white or white passing and who's attended college, so they at least have an undergraduate degree or an associate, so 2 or 4 years in college, they already have some, we call it privilege, because they're not darker skin. And these are the things they're experiencing. What are the kids who don't have parents who went to college, who grew up in a single parent household, or who grew up with grandma or aunts or uncles? What are some of the things they could be experiencing that don't even pop up on this list? And this isn't all of the ACEs. I think there's 10, yeah. Not all of them. These are just some that I pulled out. But it's kind of funny to think about how they created this list and it wasn't a tool that was representative of the community, but yet we like to talk about it. Not saying it's good or bad, just a thing. Critical thinking skills. Can you yell it? Or did you have your hand up? Okay. It was a rhetorical question, but if you want to answer it, go for it. Racism, yeah. A trauma that's experienced that kids can experience that is not up here. I grew up in a very predominantly white neighborhood as growing up in kid. I grew up in Frisco, Texas. I don't know if y'all know where Frisco is. It's about 30 minutes north of Dallas. Kids do not look like me. When I grew up in Frisco, I wore my hair straight all the time. Every Sunday, I would sit between my mom's legs with a hot comb and she would press my hair because I didn't want kids knowing that my hair looked different than them. I was always told we would go to church, I would have my nice pressed hair, and my mom would tell me, what days do you have PE? Make sure you don't run too hard because if you sweat, your hair is going to turn curly again, and then everyone's going to know that you don't have straight hair. I used to dread Black History Month. Kindergarten, I didn't go to pre-K in Frisco, but kindergarten up to when I was probably a junior in high school, I did not like the month of February, except at church. But in school, I did not like the month of February, especially in literature class, because we would always read some book written by a Black author. They'd say, what is the experience of main character who's Black? And you know what everybody would do? Everyone would turn and look at Deja. I was an African-American little girl growing up in Frisco, Texas, born and raised. And I was tasked with giving the perspective of what it was like to grow up in sub-Saharan Africa. I have no idea. Never been to Africa before. But because I had darker skin and there were only 3 other Black kids who went to my school, one of them was my friend, we were tasked with this weight of what does the Black community think about this? Oh, we're doing a Martin Luther King or MLK performance or Black History performance. Oh, you know who can go up on the stage and present about it? Deja, Mackenzie, and Colin. Your token Black children. It was praise. I was good at speaking. I was somewhat decent at acting. But is that a lot of pressure to put on someone who's 10? That's why I try to be careful when these months come around or when we're doing performances of who I pick or who I interview, because I know what it is like to sit in a classroom where everyone is looking at you. And then you internalize it where now, even if everyone's not looking at me, I also think that they are looking at me. Yeah, just yell it. Would I say I experienced cultural trauma? I would say no, because my little Black community was the church that I grew up in, and they were my little buffer around. I don't see it as a trauma. That's the great thing about trauma, is you can kind of define it for yourself. I would say probably when I moved to Austin, experience Austin humidity, which is not like Dallas humidity, and my hair puffed up no matter how many times I tried to press it and just had to embrace my natural curls that I have come to love. It was a shock. My first event where it was like, oh, we're having was it BME? Forget what it was called, Little Black Associations. And I was like, we're all of us are gonna gather in one room, and sometimes you have to pull in extra chairs because there's enough of us, and it's not a Sunday morning. I was like, what is this? I've never experienced that before. Will you hold on so we can get you the mic?
Religious trauma. Like I was like, growing up in Mexico, I grew up like super strict, like household, like religiously, right? So, and then like when you're so little and then you don't have like a say or so, like, what do you want to believe? Or like, why I shouldn't be saying the pledges, or like why I shouldn't be celebrating my birthday, right? And then when you grow up, it's just kind of like, oh my gosh, like that can like literally cause you like a lot of like, doubts when you are like older. And just like growing up like that, I grew up like in a very religious household, and then my mom was a Jehovah's Witness and my dad was a Catholic. So it was just kind of like it was a lot to deal with. And, sometimes our kiddos deal with, coming from other countries, and, they, have this religion, and then they can, like from the way they dress and everything. So it's just can be like shocking for them too.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. One random book plug, a children's book. It's called The Sandwich Swap. If you're interested, about 2 cultures coming together over food and how some foods from different cultures smell differently. I think, do we have? I'll talk while you get the mic. Sandwich Swap. 2 kids. One I think is from India, I want to say, has like curry. Another kid has peanut butter and jelly. And they have a food fight because of the different smells of their food. It's a great book to talk about different cultures coming together.
Shanna said that our grandson that we are now raising had traumatic events while living with his mother. He struggles with feeling that he needs to be the adult because at the age of 5, he was taking care of his 2-year-old brother. We're always reminding him that it's okay for him to just be a kid.
Yeah. So many of my kids, their like plan that I write for them is we're going to play for 30 minutes. We're going to play. I don't want you to worry about anything else. We're going to sit here and we're going to play soccer. And I'm like, and you're going to have fun while we play. Because even at recess, you see those moms, right? The mom of the friend group, the responsible one, which is also a great segue to signs of trauma in children, because kids don't always have the language to tell you they are experiencing a trauma. The way I like to think about it is when you start thinking about colors. I have a nephew, he's about to be 4 in like 2 weeks. He knows red, blue, green, he knows all his colors. If I show him the color aqua, he's probably going to call it blue. I will look him in the eyes and I will tell him this is aqua. He's like, this is blue. I don't know what aqua is because I haven't been taught what that color is. It's the same way with trauma. Someone in preschool, so I'm thinking 3 and 4-year-olds, they definitely could not tell you trauma. Sometimes they can't tell me what their name is. So I'm definitely not expecting them to tell me Miss Deja, my parents fight at home. But there's signs that, hey, maybe something's going on that I need to dig deeper into this. Fear being separated from a caregiver, and not first day of school jitters where they're dropped off at the door crying because they want hugs because they're coming to school for the first time. I'm talking about an intense fear that something is going to happen to my caregiver where I can't get them back. Excessive crying and screaming, it's normal, right? You drop your kid off at daycare or what have you. They cry for about 15 minutes and then they're usually able to kind of get it together until it's time to go home. There's some kids at my school that will cry for 6 hours straight. No amount of goldfish, cocoa melon, nothing will soothe them because they will not stop crying or screaming. Poor eating or losing weight. So they're not hitting those developmental milestones, and nightmares. So eating, sleeping, crying, they can't self-soothe, they can't regulate, and they have this fear of being separated. Elementary, traditional elementary school in Texas, kindergarten through 5th grade, so like 5 to 11, 12, anxiety or fearfulness, guilt or shame, difficulty concentrating, difficulty sleeping. So many of my kids who are currently experiencing trauma do not sleep. Even at school, where I'm like, hey, come take a nap in my room, they still cannot regulate themselves enough to rest. And then middle and high school, feeling depressed or alone, eating disorders and self-harm behaviors, drug and alcohol use, and risky sexual behaviors. And I will say, just because nightmares is over in preschool doesn't mean a middle schooler can experience nightmares. Just because self-harm is over in high school, middle school, doesn't mean we don't see it in elementary. But these are kind of, if we had to cap the age groups where we would see kind of the themes of behavior for kids who've experienced trauma. Now, what I like to call the upswing. You know, I took y'all on this journey talking about trauma, but we're going to come back out, talk about how we build resiliency in kids. I like to think of it as a teeter-totter or seesaw. I was not fortunate to have these at my playground in elementary school. I think the first time I actually saw one in real life, I was like 21. I was very excited. This is how you have positive experiences and coping skills on one side, and I have trauma and adversities on the other. If I'm only thinking about trauma and adversity, or I'm only having these negative experience, it's going to go down, right? That happens. The heavier side is what goes down. So we have to work on building these positive experiences, building coping skills in them, to either balance it out or have it go and be the higher side. That doesn't mean the trauma goes away. I'm not saying, oh, let me give you coping skills so we never have to talk about your trauma again, or that goes away. It's still there, but the weight of it, it doesn't weigh you down as much anymore. And that's the goal. I get asked a lot, like, this traumatic thing happened, I just want it to go away. Or I hear parents say, I just want the pain to go away. The pain may never go away, but it may not weigh you down as much. Your kid, the trauma will always be there. It's ingrained. It's a part of who they are because it happened to them. But that doesn't mean they can't balance out and be on the high side. right? There are some of those childhood experiences that were listed that I've experienced, some of those racial traumas that I've gone through. They're still a part of who I am. Okay, Siri. That doesn't mean they're gone. Sometimes they come up, I think about them. But at the same time, I have a lot of positive experiences that have happened in my life. I have a lot of coping skills that I've gone through that have balanced out the adversities. I'll very quickly tell you one of my favorite stories, or I don't say I have favorite kids, but one of the children who have a special place in my heart. Before I started working as a school social worker, I worked in residential treatment center here in Austin. And it was for kids who had been removed from their parents. So CPS had came in, said the parents were unfit and had removed them and had also terminated their rights. So these parents were in the care of the state. They also had failed out of several foster care homes. So to the point they could not find a foster care location wherever to house them. So they would end up in residential treatment where a lot of early 20-year-olds were tasked with taking care of these kids. Not only that, I then worked on the intensive unit where these were kids who couldn't have roommates. They couldn't share a room with one other person because of their behaviors. They were either so violent or had highly sexualized behaviors where they could not even be in a room at night with another child. And we had a 6-to-4 ratio, 6 kids to 4 staff, where everybody else had 10 kids to 4 staff. That's where I worked for 2 years. I learned a lot and I have a lot of stories. One of my most fond children is a little girl. I met her and she was in 5th grade. And she wasn't even in 5th grade in a public school. She was in charter school at the treatment center because she could not function in a public school. So we couldn't even send her to public school. She had to stay on our property at all times because of her behavior. This was a kid, we were in containments, which are physical restraints, multiple times a day with her, sexually acting out all of the time. Or I was looking at her and she was a little Black girl, on top of that. Didn't have parents. And finally I was like, I don't know how else to get through to you. But I sat there with her, we would color, we got into puzzles, cheerleading, I would braid her hair because that's one of the ways I connect with kids is their hair, do all of that. Finally, we get the message that she's being adopted. And I was like, there's so many times kids are getting adopted and then 3 months later, they're right back with us. So I try not to get my hopes up when they're getting adopted, but we throw her a farewell party. I wish her well. Now, in my mind, I'm like, please make it. I need you to make it. Don't hear from her. Months go by. Then on Instagram, I get a random follow request. A bunch of letters and numbers. I'm like, I don't know who this is. Look through. Hey, Deja, do you remember me? Is what it said. I'm getting adopted. Will you come to my adoption? And I was there. It was during the COVID time on Zoom, sitting there with her in front of the judge, taking the last name of this woman who took her in. And I'm like, man, I remember being in a tornado or a thunderstorm with you in the rain in a containment because I asked you to shower. And now here you are being adopted. Then another year and a half goes by. I get another message. I'm coming back to Austin. Will you come to my birthday party? She went through so many traumas that probably I don't know about. But do you think she's building some of these positive experiences, these coping skills that are balancing it out? Still one of my like, kid. Can you hold it to the end? I want to make sure we get through everything, but remind me at the end. Whoa, what's resilience? I'm going to tell you. Resilience is the ability to adapt well to adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. Being resilient does not mean that you will never experience difficulty. This is like a theme I try to hammer into people. Just because you are resilient does not mean you are immune to trauma, does not mean you are immune to hard times. You will still have hard things happen to you. I like to believe I'm resilient, and I have had some hard things that have happened. Overcoming setbacks and problems build confidence. When we think of setbacks as adults, we think of big setbacks. I graduated from UT, I had 3 different degrees from them. I was not admitted the first time I applied to go to the University of Texas. At 18, that was a setback. All my friends were going to UT. I wanted to go. I wasn't admitted. I was admitted on a conditional plan because my grades weren't high enough. Overcome confidence. For a 4-year-old, overcoming a setback is their crayon broke. Broken crayons still color. Once they figure that out, then I finally have ingrained in their heads, or they've learned that I can still color even if I don't have the perfectly sharp crayon, the fresh crayon at the box, I can still color my rainbow even with this crayon that is broken. Sometimes you have to scale down what a setback is in terms of who you are sitting across. Now, if I was sitting across of someone who was 35 years old, who's talking about broken crayons and how that hurt them, maybe I would look at them and say, hey, we're old enough now to know that broken crayons still color. But a 4-year-old, I don't look at them and say, hey, we don't cry over this. Because once they realize they can solve their problems, now they have the confidence. Now they can do it without me. Resilience does not come from rare and special qualities, but from the everyday magic of ordinary, normative human resources in the minds, brains, and bodies of children, in their families and relationships, and in their communities. Communities can build resilience. They have it in themselves to build resilience, and we have it in us to help them build resilience. I like to think of like this big, like, how do I get it? How do I claim it? It's already in you. You just got to tap into it. Which is why I like to tell my kids, you have to tap into resilience. There's 3 main things that I like to think of building resilience: cognitive development, self-regulation, and a relationship with caring adults. One thing I like to point out on caring adults is it doesn't say a caring mother, father, grandma. Caring adult can be anyone in their life who they have a strong relationship with. At school, unfortunately, sometimes I'm the one person on their campus that they feel connected to. In their 40 hours a week that they're at school, they see me for 1 hour. But I have the strongest relationship with some of the kids who attend my school. And self-regulation, cognitive development. The little example I have written here is growing up, or if you're a weekend warrior, how many people have played a sport? Any kind of sport. Running, basketball, cheerleading, volleyball. I'm like, I'll forget the other sports. Tennis. So one thing, my family were very big on basketball. We're like watching basketball. That's our big thing. LeBron just like passed the most shots ever made in the NBA last night, I think. Points, yeah. Did I say scores? Most shots, points. As you can tell, I am not the one in my family who follows basketball. But you go over the fundamentals, right? I remember being in sixth grade, learning about basketball, trying to be on the basketball team. Then you go over dribbling, shooting, and passing. Conditioning, what it called. Every time we would go back, dribbling, shooting, and passing. Dribbling, shooting, passing. How many times dribbling drills, going up and down the court, passing, shooting. How many times we'd have to stand at the free throw line and just shoot free throws over and over and over. It was practice to get into that repetition. So come crunch time, I could stand on that line, and the hope was to be confident in making that shot because I had the muscle memory of doing it. It's the same thing with resilience. I have practiced many times how to regulate my body. Started when I was young, started through co-regulation where my parents or adult helped me regulate. Now I'm an adult. I take deep breaths on my own. I don't have to be prompted to do it anymore. But a little kid, you have to prompt them, practice shooting on that free throw line until they get it. So first I want to go over cognitive development. It's the development of knowledge, skills, and problem solving that helps children think about and understand the world around them. How many of y'all have interacted with like someone under the age of 5, whether your own child, your cousin. Why? 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 Sometimes I'm like, stop asking me why, because I said so. But they want to know why. They're trying to figure out, how does this world work? Why isn't a cookie an acceptable dinner? They don't know meats and proteins and vegetables and how they need these things. So they ask why. How can you increase cognitive development? Answering those why questions. I also like to say that not every moment is a learning opportunity. I love my nephew to death. He is like the best thing that has happened. He lives in Dallas, but I would do anything for that child, including giving him a cookie for dinner. But there are some times where I'm like, sweet boy. And I always say it, Auntie Deja loves you so much. Please leave me alone. Which is my way of telling him, I love you, I care about you, but if you do not leave me to myself and stop asking me why, I am going to lose my mind. It's not a teachable moment. Exposing children to books early on, talking through problems in TV shows or movies, letting children try and solve a problem before stepping in to help. I let kids fail on little things, but they try. And there's times when my kids who are working on asking for help, I do not help them until they ask me. It's one of my favorite things. I watched 3 third graders try to figure out how to reach the roof by standing on tables safely. I knew they weren't going to fall, but I also knew that they're about up to here, and even standing on a table, they were not going to reach. I know I'm not that tall, but I also know standing on the table, I could reach the roof. Took them 20 minutes to say, Miss Deja, can you help us? And it took me 30 seconds to get it down. But I let them try and solve their problem before I step in. Talking through problems. Have any of y'all seen Paw Patrol? It's a great show. The movie's even better. There's a lot of problems in that show that you can talk through the problems and how to reach the solutions, and also talking about alternative solutions to their problems through basic things. CoComelon, there's normally always a problem in the CoComelon like songs. You can pause it and also talk through how to solve the problems and start building that cognitive development early on. It does require that you pay attention though. So fair warning. All right, next one, self-regulation. The ability to understand and manage your own behaviors and reactions. I have a typo, pretend that's an O. To feelings and things that are happening around you. Name emotions. Naming my emotions was one of my therapy goals for far too long as an adult, because no one had taught me how to name the feelings I was experiencing. Plan for challenging situations. Letting kids know if there's a change in the schedule, plan it. Targets overwhelming, plan how are we going to do this? How are we going to talk through and problem solve? So I preemptively, we call it pre-teaching in school. How can I pre-teach what's about to happen? Practice calm down strategies before big emotions come up. You cannot teach a child how to take deep breaths while they are laying out on the floor screaming and crying. You have to teach them when they are at a state where they can take in information. Praise when they show self-regulation strategies. It's hard because sometimes we need to regulate ourselves, but when I see a kid taking a deep breath, even if they weren't able to fully calm themselves down, when they're at a point to hear me again, I saw you take a deep breath and I am really proud of you for trying. It's one sentence. Model self-regulation for your child. If you don't know how to self-regulate yourself, it's very hard to teach somebody else how to do it. Just like if you don't know how to read, chances are you can't teach somebody else how to do it. I'm not good at basketball. Best believe I'm not out there coaching how to play basketball. So sometimes it takes a little bit of self-reflection. I'm gonna hold questions to the end. I'm gonna like speed through this. Give me like 3 to 4 minutes. You have to model it for them. I name it. Some of my kids, when I'm trying to teach them something and they're getting on the last nerve in my body, Miss Deja is going to take a couple of deep breaths because I just need to regulate myself right now. I'm feeling really frustrated, so we're going to pause. I'm going to take some water. just naming it. And then I take my water, I take a deep breath, and then we move on. But I make sure that I'm the calm adult in the room in order to help them and to show them how to regulate. For example, babies. When a baby cries, you don't look at the baby and tell the baby to stop crying. A newborn, when a newborn cries, you don't look at them and say, you really should stop crying right now. You need to figure out how to regulate yourself and then walk away, right? You pick up the baby, you rock the baby, you change them, you feed them, you shush them, you lay them back down, right? It's the same type thing, same kind of thing that you do for a kid who's 5. It may look a little different, but you don't look at a 5-year-old and say, no, you don't do this if they're not able to do it by themselves. It also helps them learn at school. So your kids who don't know how to self-regulate are also sometimes your kids that don't know or who do not behave well or who are academically behind in school. This is my favorite one. A relationship with a caring adult. Nothing has more impact in the life of a child than a positive relationship. One person in their life telling them, I believe in you. You can do it. You're not a bad kid. You're sweet. You're funny. You have creative problem-solving skills, which is what I like to tell some of my little friends who do really have creative problem-solving. It's not the way I would like them to do it, but it was creative, and it was a way for them to solve their problem. The most common factor in children who develop resilience is at least one stable and committed relationship with a supporting adult. Could be a parent, a caregiver, or another adult. It acts as a buffer for children, and they learn relationship dynamics by watching adults. Kids who grow up in households where they see parents fight, think that fighting is how they behave, because that's what they've seen. I have kids who at home or when I'm with them with their parents, whoever, if they know if I cry and I keep crying and I keep crying, mom will give in. I just have to keep it up because mom has given in when I keep my crying up. Those kids at school sit in the back. If I just keep quiet and I don't do anything, I can just slide by because they've learned the dynamics of how things operate. It's the same thing with relationships. This is all tied in. DRF, Developmental Relationship Framework. It was developed by the Search Institute, and it's 5 elements that make an impactful relationship. Express care, challenge growth, provide support, share power, and expand possibilities. Those are the 5 kind of key things that the Search Institute has said makes a powerful relationship. Show me that I matter to you. When I meet with kids, I try my hardest to have my phone away. If I do have to have it out, it's flipped over so the screen's not out. In meetings sometimes with my supervisor, who whatever, I tell them, I want to make sure you have my full attention because you matter to me. Challenge growth, push me to get better. Yes, I do a lot of what some people would call coddling, or I tell kids they have creative problem-solving skills when they try to run out and solve whatever problem because music was too loud, so they're going to run around the school because it's quieter. Creative problem-solving. But I'm also pushing them. I challenge them because I do have high expectations, and I believe that they can meet them. But at the same time, I'm providing support. I'm not going to challenge you without supporting you in it. Help me complete tasks and achieve goals. My kids, we set goals at the beginning of every year. What goals do you want to accomplish? What things do you want to get better at? And one of the questions on there is, what can I do to help you reach your goal? I'm like, hey, we can set goals, but also know I'm going to be there because you matter to me and I'm challenging you. I'm also going to help you though. I'm not going to leave you out there by yourself to figure it out. Share power, treat me with respect, and give me a say. Sometimes I have the opportunity to sit into a planning meeting where we're trying to figure out a behavior plan for a kid. Sometimes it's like a rewards chart. We're trying to figure out what the kid is going to earn. And I always ask, have you asked the kid what they want? Have you asked them what they want to earn? And a lot of times they'll say no. The teacher will tell me, no, I didn't ask. It doesn't matter. Why should they choose what they get to earn? Have you seen a kid who doesn't care about recess? They're few and far between, but there are those kids who don't care about recess. So if I'm threatening you, saying if you don't complete your work, you're going to miss recess, and they don't care about recess, is that going to push them to create? No, they already don't care. But if I am saying, hey, you're going to earn this thing that you want, that you picked, chances of their behavior changing is way greater. And also, I think parents, caregivers, teachers, whoever, sometimes worry that, oh, whatever they're going to pick, like, I'm not going to be able to afford that. I'm not going to be able to do whatever. I had one kid who, I'll just say, threw scissors into a wall so hard the scissors stuck into the side of the wall. I asked her, hey, what do you want to earn? Like, we're going to do this goal sheet. You're going to like work on your behavior. What do you want to earn in the end? Can I just spend more time with you? That was the thing she wanted to earn. And I was telling her, like, oh, I'm sorry, I got a lot to do. Like, what? I have money, like, I'll buy you like a basketball. Like, what do you want? Can we just have lunch? Like, you see me one time a week, but maybe we can meet twice a week instead. They'll ask for really simple things sometimes. We ended up making spaghetti. And I'm not just gonna like fancy spaghetti, like I boiled some pasta and then dumped jarred sauce on top of it. Because I work in elementary school, we only have 30 minutes. She said, Miss Deja, this is the best spaghetti I've ever had. It cost me like what, $3 at it. And we ate it in like our parent support specialist room at my school. And that was her goal. And she still talks about it to this day, about how one time she got to eat lunch with me. Expand possibilities. Connect me with people and places that broaden my world. So many of our kids have only experienced the neighborhood that they live in. If you don't have a car and you're taking the bus, chances are you go where I work, you go to HEB and you're going back. I'm going real hard. So as in East Austin, there's one post office. And it's not close to where I work, because one time I needed to drop something off at the post office and it was like a 20-minute drive. I'm trying to think in North Austin, where I live, there's a post office in like every zip code. In East Austin, there's one. What are the chances that the kids have seen a post office, have experienced what it's like to go somewhere and buy a book of stamps and then use the kiosk to mail their letter or their package? Something very simple that I remember doing with my mom, running errands on the weekend, stopping by the post office. But for a kid who lives on a bus line in East Austin, where there's one, has never experienced something as simple. You think me driving by, taking the long way and showing them, this is a post office, it's broadening their world? I took a kid to a zoo because he'd never seen a monkey in real life before. I saw his picture of a monkey. I said, that is not a monkey. We're going to go to the zoo. Now he knows what one looks like, and also a turtle and a bird and all of those other things. But I remember my pre-K field trip in white suburbia. We went to the zoo every year. For a little black and brown kid, never knew what any animal besides a squirrel looked like. A squirrel and like a vulture. And that was about it. The last thing I very briefly want to go over is supporting resilience. Yes, resilience is on the kid to build, or it's in them. They have to also work at it, but we can support it. You don't have to solve every problem of your child or the children you work with or support, or also your friends. It's okay to let them try and fail. Explore the feelings behind the issue. You failed your test. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that and failing and why you should study and go to bed and all of those good things. But how did it feel when you tried hard for something and it didn't happen? It hurts. And naming that and saying, hey, yeah, disappointment is real. Let's talk about disappointment and the fact that you don't have to throw a chair just because you're disappointed. You don't have to throw scissors into the wall because I didn't call on you. allow children to experience small problems and disappointments. Very small things. Hey man, I know we said what's today? Wednesday, we go outside and play basketball. Miss Deja is not going outside in the rain. I'm sorry. And it ends at that, and they're probably disappointed. They are disappointed because I did not take them outside. We don't do recess outside. Let's find some other problem to overcome. Find something else to do because you didn't get the thing that you wanted. And then acknowledge when things are going well, not just when they are going poorly. I feel like in work as a social worker, I only hear the bad. I only hear when things are going bad or what this kid wants to work on. And the kid is only hearing, you didn't do this. You didn't. You're bad. You failed. Hey, man, you came to school at 8:30 when you normally come at 9. I am proud of you. It is those baby steps that you start to acknowledge that help build and support the resilience of it. All right. I sped through this. What? Yeah. What? Oh. Okay. I do want to open up for questions. I did see online that someone had asked a question of how you can support. I should just look it up. It's about if a kid wants therapy. If you want your child to be in therapy, but your child does not want to go. Okay. Is that like what it was? Yeah. Mhm.
She talks to me about some things, but I know
Mhm.
that there are deeper things that she doesn't want to, talk to me about, but she's not into the
Yeah.
counseling or therapy.
Yeah.
So how do I get her the support and help that she needs?
Here's a secret. You really only get there, can receive therapy when you're ready for it. So if the kid's not ready, they're not going to engage in it. And it's not going to be beneficial. And my fear, why I don't like to press therapy onto kids, is because then they have this connotation that therapy is forced, therapy is negative. There's other ways that you can support her by shared activities, being a caring adult. Drawing is a big thing I like to do with kids. Drawing, movies, whatever, that get at some of those themes. And then when she's ready, he, she, they, when they're ready, they'll open up to you or to whoever will say that I'm ready. But if you push it onto them, it's not going to turn out well, is my thing. So I didn't answer your question, but
I think that, in addition to that, you could, like she stated, you can look at the non-traditionals and not think of it as therapy. Kids love horses or animals or drawing or writing or playing. Look at those non-traditional therapies that still can help with whatever's going on, but it's not that sit down, let me just talk about my feelings. No
Yeah.
kid is really gonna sit down and just start spilling whatever's going
Yeah.
on with them because they
look
can't
at
really name
things
it.
that are therapeutic that aren't necessarily therapy.
Piggybacking on that, so this young adult wants to take therapy,
Mhm.
but is very clear that it's going to take a very long time before she is actually able to open up.
Mhm.
What do you do there?
There's a lot of different therapy modalities. So here's my philosophy on therapy. It's a lot like dating. You have to shop, speed date to find a therapist that works well with you, that you get along with, and B is a therapy modality that you vibe with. And also that is targeted at what the problem is. So I'd say start there. There's a plethora of different modalities and therapists out there. And it's really looking at some of those non-traditional ones or finding different therapy modalities that are targeted or have had research and show they are proven to work with whatever trauma or whatever thing you're dealing with. Does that make sense? Any other? I see two.
One of the things that as a mom going through a lot of things, like you say natural disasters, we went through 8 hurricanes in South Carolina. And so going through one, we knew the amount of stressors. So what, I'm very creative and artistic. So I started to drawing before, because with the hurricanes, you know when this coming and when you can run, because it's by measurement. And so we started to drawing things, telling my children, oh my God, can you imagine? What about if the hurricane comes and it can be just like the Wizard of Oz,
Mhm.
where Dorothy flies and all of that. And what about if because we didn't know by this time, one of them, it was so big, bigger than the state of Texas, and South Carolina fits, I don't know how many times in here. So we know that probably our house was gonna be flying. So actually saying that possible. Now my children are adults, and how they cope, help them in order, help me to know that they are okay. One is in the army, and he went through 2 deployments to Afghanistan, saw a lot of things. And he said, you know what, Mom? The thing that helped me is the funny things that I could actually draw in my mind. Fun things, positive. You say just positive things that can happen. So he actually saw more the positive than the negative. So as a moms, we had to tell our children, to teach them in a very fun way that this nothing scared. I mean, it's just like possibilities, you know.
We are just about time, but I saw your hands. So I'm gonna let you ask. And then if anybody else has questions afterwards, I'll hang out and y'all can come by me.
Before I get to the last question, you guys remember to do your surveys as well as your evaluations. And then after this question, this session I end, but Ms. Deja will be here if you guys have additional questions.
I just wanted to ask, I know you said you're with community foundations, correct? I mean, communities in schools, sorry. I just wanted to ask, are you or why aren't y'all in all the schools? Because I have 2 different schools, and the one that I need some of that service is in the school where my oldest grandson goes.
It is a very long and complicated answer,
Okay,
and I can point you in the direction of who to ask the question to.
okay, I'll talk to you after
Yeah,
work.
come by me after. It's a
And-
very, and
and-
I'm saying it's like a very long process, and I could tell y'all, but also we're out of time. So come find me
Okay,
after.
All right, thank you, Ms. Deja, for your
Thank
presentation.
you.
Thanks, everyone,
Yes.
for staying in, and we've gone over a little bit
Yes.
after. We appreciate everything. The next session, I believe, starts at 3:30. I think there's a dance or some entertainment in the main one right now, if you look at your agendas.